Right, hello, I'm Emily. This is Jordan Krashidan-Balov, and we're working with the International Capstone Project Exchange, or ICPE. And so to begin, I'm going to introduce our project, and then we're going to have Krashidan-Balov go over our demos, and then finally Jordan is going to go over our project management data. So to begin, our sponsors are Dean Knutson, Katie Cox, Jill Peterson, and Richard Fovar. You may have heard of them since they work here in the computer science, and I should hope that you've all heard of Dean by now if you're in the capstone course. If not, I'd be pretty worried for you. But so the idea of the International Project Capstone Exchange is to connect students and universities from across the globe. So right now, or before we started, there was a bit of a lack of interactive features on the site, but what we really want to do is drive interest to the site and drive that interaction, because a boring site isn't really going to want to make people get involved. So we just want to make it something better, and that's a pretty hefty goal. So we had quite a few initial ideas in order to meet that need. Initially, we wanted a map, something that would be able to show the countries that are involved and the universities. That way, as the program expands, the countries on the map are going to be colored differently, and it's going to be a really great visual to show that people can get involved. We also discussed blogging and social media. Having that connected into the site so people could give their feedback and tell us about their experiences. And with that comes along content management. We want to make sure that anything on the site, that they're saying nice things. And then we finally talked about having a sponsor or a prospective sponsor page. That way we can show who's involved and show those that might want to get involved how they can. So there were still quite a few big ideas there. We boiled it down to our final requirements that we actually elicited, was to have that map that displays the participating countries. We also wanted a field for sponsors, like I said, a page for the sponsors to go to or prospective sponsors to go to. And we also wanted to increase subject visibility. So if we have mechanical engineering projects or computer science projects, we want those subjects to be very visible. So our vision with that is to create an interactive map. So we want it to be able to zoom in, click on the countries and get their names. We want it to color if they're a participating country. We also wanted a tiered sponsorship, so a page that would show that sponsors could put their logo in and have it displayed based on their donation level or their sponsorship level. We also made sure that those subjects that we had, they were originally in a paragraph form. We moved that into bullets to make it much easier to see visually. And we also wanted to implement everything on the website with the application data that Richard and Jill have been working on the application side to make for easy maintenance. And so now we're just going to show off our little demo.
Okay, so as Emily mentioned, the features that we were working on in the project was creating a map. Creating a map that displays some sort of information on the map in an interactive way. So I'm just going to show the demo over the map, and then I will go over what we did. So since midterm is basically the same map, but there are actually two big differences, two big changes we have made since midterm. The first one is making the automation part work, and the second part is applying the algorithm that takes the countries and applies for different colors on those countries only. So it was like more hard-coded before. Now everything's automated. So if I go over the map, and so this is the main page, and if we go to about, we can see that there is a map here now displaying. These not, I don't know if this is the latest, the countries we have right now in the database, but this is what we have, and there's some more countries here. But as you can see, there are like 5 countries that are in our database. So we have in the JSON file, we are reading it, and we're displaying these countries in different colors. And then when you hover over those countries, you can see their country's name and that the universities participating and with these countries. So basically, we have like 4 countries right now. So for the other countries that are not listed, you can just simply hover over it. It doesn't display anything since we don't do anything with those countries. So during the testing period for this map, we discovered few more different features. It can be improved for the future, but for now, it's working. It's working really good. So if I hover over this, I just add this. That's in Mexico, right? So let's see if I have 20 universities signed up in this project and this the ICPE, that you can see the list is no longer available. So you can see only up to 18. So this could be some area that could be improved in the future. So we just discovered in the last phase of testing. And so also when you have a country close to the box here, it can do that. So we could have it display in different section of this box, but you can always just do this and then display any country you want to put on. So for the sake of showing that the country is actually working with different colors, so I can just do this to show that actually it can apply all the countries. Okay, here I can show that all the countries can be color coded differently, and there is no adjacent countries that can be the same colors. Sometimes you have to reload this. Okay, let's see. When you're reading it, it doesn't right away. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm not sure from here. I may have to restart the. So here. So as you can see, there are all the countries here, color coded in 4 different colors only, and then there's no countries that adjacent to each other with the same color. The only exception can be if they are not land. There's no border on the land. It can be like a sea, and then the 2 countries can look like the same color, but they are not technically bordered. So what we did, we basically have 4 arrays of the countries, and they applied the color on those countries. That shows it doesn't take the border like a coordinate of the countries and apply the algorithm work. It's just taking the 4 arrays of the countries and then applying these colors for those countries, specific countries. So basically, that's what it looks like when you have all the countries. Let's see, sign up with ICP. It's how it's going to look like. Basically, that's what we did, and automation products just work as I just showed you. If you change the countries, if you add more countries, it should color code right away over here. And that's the way it works and we did multiple testing phases with different file size that it works just fine. And then I will turn to Balav. He will do his sponsor page.
So till the midterm, we were working on the maps and other, and then we started the sponsors right after midterm. On there, we did lots of research about how different companies display their sponsors, like just the logo of their brands, how the CNN, NBC, and other. And we actually didn't have any, the valid logo or their like links to their website. That's why we created a JSON file. So and then on that you can just update from there, and then it automatically detect everything and just put it on the both layers. If it is a higher prioritize, it put it on the top part. If it is a lower, it put it to the down part. So I'll show you if this is an updated one. So all this image, and then it's like getting it from the properties of JSON object, and also it has a link. So if I click on this right now, if this was just thing, if it is a real valid sponsors or like Microsoft or Google, they sponsor this. So when we click on it, it takes to their website, any link they provide to us, and then they can just go there and do some research, and then after that they can go. And then so we actually have two different layers. So first one is a strategic partner, and then second one is just a sponsor. So for the strategic partner, it is, from our understanding, it is the sponsors that give us like some 5 to 6,000 or a little higher money, and then so they can be featured on this, as just for the example. So on this, so to minimize the the rivalry or anything, we made it so that it can, whenever you refresh every time, it just generate random just takes that and shift it to the array, and then it just shuffle it, and then so all the links of the image is also valid. So if we click on this, it takes to the Adidas. So from there, so it every time when they refresh it, it just gives them higher, they don't have any higher precedence, so they'll be. And then if you make it to a mobile site, is also responsive, so they can just, and then if they don't want to be here, they can just like refresh it, and then some else will get that place. And for the second sponsor, so this is like little lower sponsors. So on this, what it does is it just takes their name, and then it's automatically alphabetize it. So not from the image, like if we just give any name, right now we just give them the name of the logo. Right now it is Adidas, Amazon, Cross, Disney, and Domino, and DreamWorks. So what it is doing, it is taking every single alphabetized and also checking out the second letters and other, and then it is like shifting them. And then so the first one will always get 3, and then the bottom one will always get 4. So if you want to manipulate that later on, and then if you don't want to do anything with JavaScript or anything, what you can do is you can just go to institution, sponsors JSON, and then you can just, let's see this, and then oh wait, it didn't copy that. Where is it now? So if we add the strategic or any on, then here automatically, and if we just change the name, if it is a sponsor or strategic, and just give them a different name, like I think if we already have Adidas, like ABCD, and then if we include any other name, like the name or URL can be provided from the sponsor or whatever they want, and then if it is automatically save all. I think this one is the updated one. So what it did is, so now we had one or two extra. So it automatically send it to whichever, if it is a sponsors or if it is strategic. And then the image size is automatically reduced down to actual. So that one you can later on change it to. And then also Yeah, we took one of that out. Yep, and then so like whatever you put it here, it automatically does that from the JavaScript, so that can be automatically created. And I think that should be it for the sponsors. And then I'll get to the
All right, so now what we're going to do is go through a little bit more of the project management data. After our last presentation, we received some overwhelming feedback that described our user stories as too large and too unspecific to be a traditional user story. In fact, most people commented that they were more like epics rather than user stories. So what we did is we rewrote all the user stories that we had scheduled for Sprint 3 to be more specific and more fitting of a traditional user story. And that took us from having 3 user stories for a total of 14 user story points in Sprint 3 to having 12 user stories with 44 user story points. So you can see that the disparity between how we were classifying what a true user story was pretty incorrect. And after we had all that feedback, we went back to the drawing board, kind of rewrote them, and we found that the new method of making user stories helped us achieve our goals in a little bit more concise way and made the goals and the tasks that we needed to complete those goals more tangible and more reachable within a given time limit. Another piece of feedback that we received was that we had dedicated an entire sprint to doing research about the project and the tools, but we hadn't actually accounted for any research spikes. So that was something that we unfortunately never really accounted for, but we did learn about it in the end. So as you can see here, this is our velocity from what you saw at the last time was sprints 1 and 2. For sprints 3 and 4, we had dedicated sprint 3 completely to implementing the sponsor page. And we left 4 unplanned right away because we knew that we had some parts of the map that we needed to finish, and we anticipated not finishing the sponsorship page completely with the given information that we had. So we left sprint 4 open to interpretation at that point. And then unfortunately, in Sprint 4, we did have some goals that we were not able to achieve because we had a little snafu with the legal department getting back to us, so we weren't able to completely implement everything that we wanted to, but we have pushed that off to someone else, so it's no longer our problem. As far as the time breakdown goes, another part of the feedback that we had from the last presentation until this one was that we didn't spend a lot of time coding, which is obvious from our first sprint. We didn't do any coding, we did all research, but in this half of the semester we had about half of our time devoted to developing the code base, about a third of our time, about 36%, was spent in meetings, and that included mostly all of us, although some people did have code review meetings or specific meetings. And then, as you can see, research went way down from last time, and documentation still took about around 15 to 20% of our time. Overall, throughout the semester, we had identified, I think, 22 or so risks and issues. On the management side, the project management side, we had some issues with requirements elicitation. As you saw in the beginning, we had a huge field of choices that we could have gone with, different paths that we could have taken. And so we fumbled around with those ideas for a little bit too long. But in the end, we did end up nailing some down that we were able to demonstrate for you today. Also, a risk that I just finished talking about, the user stories and time estimations. Especially the time estimations, we really did not do well in that part. So we could have maybe done a little bit more research or just used some other resources that would have helped us estimate how long things would have taken better, and that would have helped us stay on track a little bit more, because we didn't stick to our schedule very well, and we started just bleeding into each successive sprint. And then on the technical side, some of our major risks included the country names and borders that we're going to be probably changing in the future. We don't know, but we want to be sure that we stay up to date with current politics and goings on in the world. So we wanted to find a reliable source for that, and we actually did. One of our mentors provided a source that we believe to be reliable, and it self-updates. And then another issue that we had with that was our country naming scheme. On the app side, users are allowed to pick a country that they're from, and on our side we were using a different list of country names, just different abbreviations or whatever, so we had to reconcile those so that the countries actually showed up where they were supposed to and not crash the program. And then one risk that we've identified that hasn't actually come to pass yet, but may be an issue in the future, is that with the sponsorships, we don't actually have any real data yet. And while we have tried to anticipate what the real data will look like, we may find in the future that it doesn't meet the needs of the owner. So hopefully that isn't an issue, but it is something to take into account for when we hand the project off. Speaking of handoff, that's part of our next steps. What we have to do is hand the project off to one of our mentors, Katie Cox. She is in charge of hosting this or putting it onto NDSU's site, and she'll be sort of the manager of that. As I mentioned before, we haven't implemented any of the legal wording of the site yet, so that also has to be made available to sponsors and anyone who may be interested. One thing that we also had talked about as a team was the donation functionality, or getting people actually able to sign up to be a sponsor. We didn't implement that, but that is one thing that needs to happen. And then just in maintenance of the website, the site is hosted by the computer science department, but the app is not. So the app needs to spit out the data that we use on the website. So those have to be periodically updated as the data changes or new members are added or taken away. So just to stay current, that's what needs to happen. As far as our post-mortem goes, we feel that the highest point of this project was being able to pick 2 things that we were very interested in doing and completing those, so that we were able to actually work on things that we liked and that the sponsor wanted. One of the low points was that we had a lot of school breaks and snow days and just schedule interrupting things that really prevented us from staying on track, and some fault of our own in that part too. But as far as recommendations for our future projects, we think it would be prudent to research early and often instead of waiting until the end and finding out why something doesn't work and then researching it. We also thought that our mentors gave us a lot of feedback and were very open to doing code reviews, which we think is a good thing and would recommend that for anyone working on a project. Another recommendation is to stick to your schedule when you create it. Even if you can't meet it, don't put other things off to try to finish another thing because then nothing is finished. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
More of a comment than a question. I'm not going to give you grief over it. Maybe Dean asked for this, but I will state the multicolor heading above the map is a very interesting design choice.
We actually don't have any standard or anything from the website. We were trying to. I don't think it will stay that way because.
It's like Comic Sans of
Yeah.
font colors, so.
We were playing with finding the colors provided by the website. So we haven't set a color, and we also don't know the font size or like the font itself that either the college or the department prefers us to use. So yeah, that's going to be changed.
I had 2 or 3 things. One, thank you for not pointing out how bad a job I did with requirements. They kept changing the whole thing. But that said, I got some more.
Are you going to give them bad grades so they work over the summer?
But if you, I don't know how much time they would take or anything. The one on the map where you had some limit to how many universities get, we're going to have more than that. And so if it's easy to change it to a, you know,
Multi-columns or something.
No, just one that has a
Scroll.
scrolling
Yeah.
thing. That would be great. And the other one, again, I'm not sure even quite how to do it, but if you can think about it, maybe you could just leave suggestions. We did kind of get approval through the lawyers just yesterday.
Okay.
When we click on a logo,
Okay.
instead of going just to
So-
one place, we can actually go to 2 places, so we can go to the one that you're doing.
Okay.
But we also have the ability to go to one that's their recruiting site. Like, here's the
Yeah.
job listing one, and so we could have maybe both of those
Yeah.
available or something. Is the other one.
So then you want to specify exactly what link you want to put on the bottom or on the top, because how do you know which link?
Yeah, well, think about it and give me a suggestion
Okay.
before. Because we
Because
do
can have two
we
link
can
in the
legally
picture.
do that,
Okay.
which I wasn't sure we could. We can.
And I guess I have one more. You mentioned when you were breaking down your user stories, you had more stories, but the points changed. Did you kind of rescale that, or?
Yeah, so after the first presentation, our midterm presentation, we got a comment that said, looks like you've done a lot of work, but not a lot of user story points. And so when we looked into it, and even in class we had mentioned that user story points are kind of arbitrary. But we found that like saying the whole map took 12 user story points, to everyone else that didn't seem, they were like, okay, that's it didn't seem to fit what general people understood that metric to be. So what we did was we just went through and said, okay, did doing this only take 6 units? No. So we just broke them down and made them a little bit more, fitting with the general understanding. A lot of sites that we looked at kind of equated a user story point to roughly 2 human hours of work. So we kind of use that as like maybe a goal or kind of a base to go off of. But the user story points changed because we felt that some things, that third sprint number was based off of the second sprint planning. So when we got feedback that wasn't really reflective or correct, we changed everything about the third sprint without actually adding any work, just changing the numbers.
Well, not just a couple more orders of magnitude, 40,000 story points.
Yeah, well, That's in base units, so yeah.
All right. Hero points.
Yeah, yeah.
Questions?
Any other
Alright.
questions?
Thank you.